SBC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
Hello and welcome to iGaming Daily, supported by Optimove. I'm your host, James Ross, and in today's episode, we're diving into Portugal's booming online gambling market, specifically looking through the lens of the suppliers. With the latest numbers showing record-breaking revenues, particularly in the online casino and sports betting segments, Portugal is on the rise. And what a fitting time for it to be on the rise with SBC Summit Lisbon just next week. Today, we'll explore the key questions: how can suppliers maintain the growth momentum? What are the biggest challenges they face and how they can shape the future of Portugal's gambling market? And I'm joined by Greentube's regional manager within the sales and key account management team, Lisa Sandner, to go through all the above. Lisa, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Hi, James. All good. Thank you. Very excited to answer all of your questions. Yeah.
I'm very excited to speak to you today. It's going to be an interesting conversation. And Portugal, again, I know SBC Summit Lisbon is just next week and it's a perfect time to talk about this, but it's also a perfect time because latest figures from Portugal are outstanding, to be honest, and it's something I didn't foresee happening, mainly because we just don't touch upon the market that much. But before we do jump into that, this is your first podcast, Lisa, correct?
It is, yes.
Okay, so with that, one, we're honoured for you to be on iGaming Daily to be your first podcast, but I think the audience need to know a little bit about you. So not to be too cliche, but we're going to do a little icebreaker thing. What's the one thing that you think's interesting about yourself?
I would say I'm a very introverted person when it comes to my private life, and privately I'm also very, very much introverted, but I have no fear talking to customers, being completely me. I'm always super honest, super natural also when it comes to everything I say, actually, so people can trust me a lot. And yeah. Do
you know what? I'm going to bounce off you on that one, because even though I'm the host of a podcast, I do a lot of multimedia stuff for the company because I'm the multimedia editor, and even in my spare time, I stream video games. I am quite an introverted person off the screen. So it's like when I'm on the screen, I put on this different persona. And then when I'm off it, I'm a recluse.
Yeah, you put on a mask, basically. Yeah. It's not that you're fake in any way, but you're just a different person then. And then you go home and then you're like, now I'm me again.
When I'm off camera, I'm not smiling. I'm just like my normal face, but everyone's like, why do you look so moody? I'm like, I'm not moody. It's just my normal face. Perfect. Thank you for that. I know it's not always it's not always something that people are open to, but it's nice for the audience to kind of gauge who you are a little bit. So we're going to jump into Portugal, but before we do, now's, I always say, is appropriate time to mention our sponsor or our supporter of the iGaming Daily podcast, someone who is not an introvert, and that is Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. For listeners out there, you can still claim your first month of Optimove by visiting optimove.com/SBC. As per usual, the links will be left in the description below. Now, Portugal. And I think before I ask you a question, Lisa, I think it's good to start unpacking the latest numbers from Portugal's gambling market and to kind of take a closer look at some of the crucial roles suppliers play. And in Q2 of this year, in the second quarter, Portugal's online gambling market saw a new revenue record of €261.8 million, with online casino leading the way. Slot machines alone accounted for over 80% of casino spending. So I'm going to ask you, Lisa, for Greentube, those numbers alone are very appealing. But for Greentube, what appeals to you most about the Portuguese market?
For us, so the Portuguese market is a rather small or a niche market, I would even call it, but it has shown, as you said, impressive growth with our operators. And when we consider the number of licensed operators that we have live, alongside the revenue we generate in Portugal, I would say it's a highly attractive market.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think we're seeing such good growth within the market? I've just reeled those numbers off, and 80% in slots alone is very, very impressive. Why are we seeing such good growth in that market?
We are working closely with our operators to ensure optimal game positioning. And of course, we launch as much exclusive titles as possible to capture the player's attention on to Greentube games. But as well, the strategic positioning that our operators give us on our games, and combined with the quality content that we offer in Portugal, ensures us a stable and consistent performance.
Mm-hmm. And how can suppliers, like Greentube of online gambling technology and content, differentiate their offerings to help licensed operators within the Portuguese regulated market compete more effectively against the illegal platforms? Because every market has that kind of battle, the legal from the illegal, the black with the white.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and it's tricky to answer. But in my opinion, it's always quite challenging to compete with the illegal platforms in every regulated market, because you have it in every regulated market. But however, we as Greentube, we maintain a strong commitment by being one of the few suppliers that exclusively provides content to licensed operators in Portugal. So it's crucial to raise players' awareness that Greentube games are only available on platforms such as Betano, Solverde, or Estoril within this market. So I'm, of course, not only talking about Portugal here, but globally, that's our focus, that we only provide content to the regulated markets and licensed operators.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to keep coming back to those 80% numbers for slots, because again, that is one of the most impressive numbers I've seen from a market's, financial records. For me, though, I'm going to ask you this. What innovations in game design, and again, I'm going to focus specifically on slot machines, Greentube excel with them, could suppliers kind of develop to maintain the dominance of online casinos within Portugal and attract a broader player base?
So we have observed a growing trend in particularly crash games, but also buy bonus games within the Portuguese market. And actually, we're actively also working on delivering our very first crash game onto our operators at the earliest opportunity. So as well, this is not just for Portugal, but globally speaking, we're working on our very first crash game. So that's very exciting.
Yeah, I remember when I first experienced the crash game. So a little bit of information for you, Lisa. When I first joined the company, I was a writer for Slot Beats and then became a senior journalist for Casino Beats. And I experienced my first crash game, and I believe it was Funfair Technology or Funfair Games' Astro Booms to the Moon. I'd never experienced these before, and I just thought to myself, wow, like these they're very socially engaging if you have the commentary where you can communicate with the other players beside you. But I'm just like, this is intense, and this is insanely fun, the way you can play it. And it's completely different to a slot game. I mean, slot games, you have some control. Crash games is literally the edge of your fingertips of, are you going to win? Are you not? Because you have a choice to back out. And I never thought, well, I had an inkling that crash games could do well. I never thought now there'll be kind of a staple up there with the likes of online slots, with roulette, baccarat, stuff like that. I never thought it would hold that mantelpiece of being stood next to them for such longevity, and they're doing so well. I
think also because the audience is getting younger and younger, and they're trying to find something new and fresh and something more engaging, as you said. But the classics obviously will always perform because they're known for such a long time. They're established in the land-based casinos as well. But yeah, the audience, I think, is looking for something modern, I would call it. Yeah,
you're right. And one of the key things I've noticed, and this is what I think crash games do offer, is kind of that instant gratification, where the younger audience and I think this stems from kind of social media usage. When you look at like the likes of TikTok and, Insta Reels, it's kind of that not short attention span, but kind of they only want to concentrate on something which is 30 seconds long. Going a little bit more now, but it's that instant gratification of having it. And that's what crash games do. They offer that with some suspense and intrigue. One of the things I did notice when I was playing it, though, is just how hooked I was. And that kind of raised some alarm bells around kind of like RG when it comes to crash games. And I'm going to kind of twist this conversation a little bit into that direction. And within Portugal, we saw a rise of self-exclusions. For Greentube and suppliers, how can you integrate kind of responsible gambling tools and features into your products to help operators address this issue while still maintaining that player engagement?
So from a supplier perspective, of course, we ensure that our games are developed in a way so that the operators can supply their self-exclusion tools for the protection of their players.
Simple.
Sorry, no,
it's fine. It's like, that's how simple it can be. But how might kind of suppliers, we'll look at it this way then. So it's always good for suppliers to kind of communicate and work with the regulators to ensure, their products, they meet stringent tax and regulatory requirements. How might Greentube kind of collaborate with these regulators while still being competitive and appealing for the market? Because again, you are competing against the black market, which don't have those restrictions against them.
Yeah, I mean, we at Greentube ensure compliance in Portugal by partnering with the regulators from the beginning. We use experts in compliance. We're keeping the communication clear with them as well. And by adapting the products to meet local rules and using feedback, we balance the following regulations with making our products as attractive as possible within the markets. And we're already differentiating each other from other suppliers, probably by not supplying into the illegal market.
And we've already touched on regulations. You've mentioned yourself about targeting, the more younger demographics with the audience. So let's kind of merge this into kind of one penultimate question, shall we say? How can the Portuguese regulator, the SRIJ, adapt its regulatory framework to better combat the rise of these unlicensed gambling operators, particularly, like we've just mentioned, amongst the younger demographics?
Again, very interesting and tricky question to answer, but in my view, a strong initial step would be to approve games only from suppliers who do not provide the same content to illegal platforms. While obviously this is certainly easier said than done, it's essential to make regulated sites more appealing to the players. And for instance, the regulator could be working towards the legal platforms by allowing only the best performing content to be live on regulated websites, or simply to block the sites, but also to penalize the suppliers as well who provide their content onto those platforms. Otherwise, it's like a never-ending story of blocking sites, and then there's another one popping up the next day. So I would say it's also important to, like, that the regulators also looking at the suppliers who provide their content onto those platforms.
Perfect. And final question for me. It might be I might throw one more in there. It's not just Portugal that Greentube operate in. You've got other regulated markets across Europe. Can you just explain what Greentube's plans are across these other regulated markets throughout Europe?
Yeah, of course, we're constantly exploring our opportunities to expand and distribute our content across as many legal compliant platforms as possible, and giving the strong recognition in Europe that we already have. We are providing content to the largest and most important regulated markets already. But whenever there's a new market that undergoes regulation, the company is obviously committed to securing entry at the very earliest possible stage.
Perfect. I did tease one more question. Don't worry, it's nothing too intense. Like I said, Lisbon, SPC Summit Lisbon is next week. And I've never been to mainland Portugal. I've been to Madeira, and I'm absolutely in love with that island. To the point that me and my wife were thinking about moving there in the distant future. Yeah, we're obsessed with it. But I do want to kind of see what mainland Portugal is like, certainly Lisbon, to see if it kind of replicates that feel that we love about Madeira. So I'm going to ask you, because I've never been there. I don't know if you've been to Lisbon yourself.
Actually, it's also my first time in Lisbon. I have been twice to the Algarve in the south, but I've never been in the city. So I'm also quite interested what it brings, because I also, as you are, I love the country. It's so nice. You can go surfing. You can do so much. The people are really open, and yeah. It's such a nice place to be. So I'm just looking forward to go to the city and explore a little bit more.
Well, that was going to be my question of what you're looking forward to most of Lisbon. But
sorry.
You've just thrown a spanner in the works. Like, you can surf in Lisbon? I might hire a surfboard now.
I mean, not in Lisbon because it's not on the coast, but I think everything closer to the seaside, they just all have a surfboard and surf. I would say that's the cliche of Portugal, I guess.
Well, for all the listeners out there, if you expect to see me now at the conference hall throughout the SB Summit Lisbon, you won't see me, but come to the seaside, you might see me on a surfboard there instead. Lisa, thank you for joining us today on the latest episode of iGaming Daily, supported by Optimove. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for giving me your debut for iGaming Daily. You've been fantastic. Nothing to be nervous about.
Thank you so much for having me, James. It was a delight to speak to you.
But I will see you next week in Lisbon. For the listeners out there, make sure you tune in tomorrow for more iGaming Daily, and also tune in during the conference week because I will be on the floor in the conference hall, not on the surfboard, reporting for iGaming Daily there. But until then, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News Network or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.